Hey, it's Edwin Dearborn, another edition of Growth Driven. And today with me is Tyler Foley, and we're going to be talking about corporate safety tips, and we're going to be talking about his journey as an entrepreneur and a public speaker. So join us and learn a lot. All right, bye-bye. Hey, this is Edwin Dearborn, and with me all the way from the middle of Canada is Tyler Foley. So Tyler, thank you so much for joining us here on Growth Driven.
Oh, Edwin, it's an absolute joy and a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. So I was looking at your website, and I'll feature that in a little bit later on here in the, I scroll it just like I'll do it something like this, totalbuyin.com, and I'll feature that throughout the talk here. But I wanted to talk to you not only about workplace safety tips, which I know that you're an expert in, and we'll talk about that first, but then kind of go earlier on your journey as an entrepreneur and also as a public speaker, because I've seen on your website, you're very much out there on the forefront, educating people as a public speaker. So we'll speak to that as well. But tell me about some workplace safety tips that you tend to find the most important to suggest or coach people on?
Sure. I think the first one is we don't have to have the title of a supervisor or a manager to find leadership within the safety ranks. I think a lot of times we forget that our field level worker, the boots on the ground, are the people who are going to provide the most insight into our safety system. The other advice that I often give a lot of the clients that I work with is that your corporate culture is your safety culture. A lot of times we think of safety as this siloed area. This is the safety department, or this is the safety system. This is our safety program. And it's over here where the reality is, whatever your corporate culture is, if you feel that your safety culture is broken, they don't listen to me and we want to do this, but they don't follow them. Well, if you are having that issue, you got to look a little bit higher up, a little bit more internal to that, because your corporate culture is your safety culture, and there's a disconnect somewhere.
That makes a lot of sense. I think you've articulated that very well, in that it isn't a siloed activity, because if it's siloed, people don't take safety as seriously as they should. But when it becomes part of the culture, the way of living, the way how we treat each other, then I think it gets it's easier to adopt those measures.
Well, and you touched on probably the most important part of that is you have to internalize it. There has to be a reason for somebody to want to work safely. And the problem is if you don't have a strong why behind it, if you don't connect with people on an emotional level, they're only going to be doing it because you've told them to.
Right.
And that is the absolute worst place for a safety system to be, because you're getting compliance begrudgingly. And that's where the breakdowns happen. That's where deviations from standards happen. That's where shortcuts happen. The Marines have a really good strategy to overcome this. And that is, if you ever look at a Marine base, right, they have the perfectly tailored walkway. So they have the sand walkway, and then you have the grass, you know that you go here. And like, even in the desert, they will have these roped off areas. And you ask yourself, well, it'd be quicker for me to get from the shower to the barracks if I could just cut across right here. But you watch, every Marine will walk down the path and over, down the path and over. And why? Because they know that that's the safe path to travel. And the reason they maintain that sand so perfectly is so that you can see if somebody steps out of the path. It's an instant indicator that somebody has deviated from what is a standard and a normal. And in an extreme scenario like that, it's important, because this is a path we've established. We know it's safe, but you step outside of here, there could be an improvised explosive device, an IED, landmine, something. This is not safe. This is safe. Follow the path. It's established. We know it's there. Now, counter to that, this may be a better path, but we need to establish that this is a path that can be taken. Instead of just cavalier going off, we say, okay, Now I propose this as a better way. Let's analyze this path to walk. It's shorter, quicker. Now let's find out if it is as safe or safer to do this. And you make the argument for it, but then you have to explore that path. But if you establish that system, again, from a military standpoint, chain of command, we know that this is it. We propose this, and then we work through it. If we follow the system and everybody is bought into that system, we got everybody walking in the same path. That's when you've really established a good safety culture, because you have a good corporate culture, because you have a culture of sharing, of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So I take it that you probably work more with companies that do manufacturing, assembly. That's my first assumption.
And it's a good one. It'd be false, but it's a good one. I bring a lot of very diverse industries together, and I pull best practices from a lot. So a lot of the best practices that I'll get are from very industrial, very manufacturing type industries who have done that. But most of my clients are engineering firms who need to have safety systems, but don't understand why they need to have safety systems, because they're in the office. They don't need safety. But then they need to have this program because their client sites, the large oil and gas, the manufacturing, etc., will need them to have this in place. Another subsect of clients that I work with quite regularly are continuing care homes and daycares, where they have a definite need for safety, but a lot of their safety focus is on the people that they care for and not on themselves, and trying to translate so that they understand that their personal safety is just as important as the safety of the people in their care. And then I know I work with a lot of construction, a lot of oil and gas. My clientele is quite diverse, but they all have the same themes, that there's a disconnect somewhere, and just bridging that gap of understanding so that they recognize why they are doing the thing that they're doing. And that's really what it comes down to: education over enforcement.
Okay, great. So now, obviously, in the last year and a half, we've seen some changes regarding protocols on safety due to COVID-19 regulations thereof. How has that impacted your business? Not so much your business in terms of growing it, but just how you deliver and adding that as a new protocol.
So it's been funny, because obviously there's been a switch with the business. One of the blessings that I have found in this whole scenario is that people are far more aware of personal health, of personal hygiene. There's also a lot more collaborative feeling amongst companies now, like what are the best practices, because I don't know what to do, so let's start to share, which has always been a tenet of safety. It's every safety system has been plagiarized, right, from somewhere else, right? And that as a safety professional, we are going to share our best practices. So if you need a code of practice, or if you need a procedure, or let me share what I have developed, and you can grow from it. So there's been a good collaboration. What has been interesting is, like anything, there's a lot of information out there, and what is the best practice, and what is the best practice currently, and how do we adopt and ever-changing regulation. And what I've found interesting is now people are aware that there are regulations. There are things that you have to, they've always been there. We've always had OSHA protocols. We've always had OHS protocols. We've always had some form of government oversight saying, look, you need to do this to protect your people. If you're going to run a business, you have certain legal obligations to your employees and to the government to make sure that you are running an operation that is safe and that isn't going to hurt or injure people. And a lot of people kind of sort of knew that, but now it's become forefront that people really truly understand this is important, and it's people can get hurt, and in ways that we didn't expect.
Right.
Right.
Beyond the illness.
Yes.
Yeah. But the illness has kind of highlighted the fact, wow, safety, like it's brought it to a whole new level of awareness, but just not for the illness, but just as a subject matter entirely.
Exactly. So it's opened up people's eyes to the fact, because now they're looking into this regulation, but now they understand that there's this and this and this.
Mm-hmm.
And now we need to do hazard assessments, and hazard assessments need to take into account both, physical hazards as well as psychological hazards, chemical hazards. And so as we're going through, it's been a really amazing opportunity for me to educate everyone around the health and safety components, and make it so that it's understandable too. So that's the biggest problem, is communicating this. So as changes happen, how do I let my staff know if I don't fully understand either?
Right.
And how do we effectively and best practice get this information out?
Yeah, that's awesome. If you're just joining me now on the video, or later on, months from now, or you're joining the podcast, I'm with Tyler Foley. You can go to totalbuyin.com and find out more about his services. So, Tyler, tell me, so how did you get started in this business? Start to take me through the beginning of this journey, and maybe some of the ups and downs that you've had, that every entrepreneur has in building their business.
Sure. I backdoored into safety in a really odd and interesting way. So when I was 6 years old, I started acting in theater, and over the course of 19 years, developed a fairly sustained and very rewarding film and television career. So I was an actor professionally for a long while.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in my early 20s, one of the fun things to do was get involved with stunt work. And I am by no means a stunt man. I am an actor who has done stunts. But one of the bits of stunt work that I got to specialize in was high falls, because I'm a small guy of stature. It's hard to tell on video, but I am 5'7" and 135 pounds. Even in COVID, I've ballooned up to like 145, and I don't mind the weight, right? But I am a tiny wee guy. And so when you push me out of a window because of scale, I actually look like I'm falling further than somebody who would be taller.
Yeah.
And so I would specialize in these 30 to 60 foot high falls into boxes. It was kind of my gig. I really enjoyed it. And by boxes, I mean like cardboard boxes, 1 by 1 by 2 packing boxes. You create a platform with them and you fall in. And doing those stunts was probably the safest job that I ever had. The amount of engineering that goes into it, the amount of technical work, the training, the practice, the rehearsal that goes into just a 5-second clip in a film. There's probably 6 to 8 weeks worth of work on the back end that nobody ever sees.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So when I retired after an exhaustive 19-year career of acting at the ripe old age of 25, I went into school and got an engineering discipline, and I specialized in geomatics, which is just a fancy word for map making, earth study. And specifically, I got into photogrammetry and cartography, which is, again, really fancy words for I made maps with pictures.
Okay.
And I developed my first company at that point, and we specialized at first in aerial photography, and then transitioned into the very new burgeoning field of interior mobile mapping. It was about 10 years ahead of its time, because this was back in 2009, 2010. And the technology was very, very, very new, and very, very expensive. And although it had applications for everybody, nobody bought it because it was just too expensive and they didn't really understand the technology. Now I laugh because I see Google ads for buying this kit of your own and go in and help realtors do virtual tours and help building infrastructure, find out what there's all the applications that I was talking about 10 years ago. I'm getting Google ads for now, going, oh, I did that first.
Yeah.
But that business collapsed.
Okay.
But when I created it, what my primary client was the government. And when your primary client is the government, they insist that you have a health and safety program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to get all of this safety training in order to develop said program and run it for my employees.
I see.
And so when the business collapsed, here I have all the safety training.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do with it? Well, now I started showing other businesses how to develop the safety programs, because I had a really good understanding, and there's so many people who get overwhelmed with it.
Yeah.
They go, that's too much. I just don't know. And I go, no, it's really simple. Let's break it down for you. And I found that I have a really big gift. It's my one thing that I can do well, that I communicate, and I can make these concepts very simple and easy to understand for small businesses who need to have this in place, but just don't think they have the time or don't understand the process. So we break it down, we make it really simple. And so jumping out of Windows became, I was able to translate stunt work and understand all the safety systems that went into there. Suddenly it made sense to me. And I was like, oh, that's why we did it. This is an engineering control. This is an administrative control. This is PPE, personal protective equipment. That's why we use it. Here's the I get it. And so now I translate that over to the people who I help.
It's really incredible that you like you said, you've got this gift to be able to translate seemingly complex language into, probably you break it down into many understandable modules, and you take them on a gradient scale of understanding, going, okay, let's just get down to the core here, the why, and then let's get this one little piece, and then you start to build a system of understanding.
Yeah. And it really, and that's what it is, because when we're talking about a health and safety system, a lot of people think, it's my binder on the shelf, right? I'm going to create these policies and procedures. I'm going to put them up on my shelf, right. And that's my safety program. That's the system. And what they forget is that the system is everything to it. So yeah, you have these policies, but how are you communicating those policies? Who is involved in developing them? How often do you review them? Do they mean anything to you? And do they mean anything to your worker? And do they mean the same thing?
Right.
What are we?
Yeah, and are we putting it into practice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Has it been put into practice? How easily was it to put into practice? Could you implement that thing? Yes, you said you were going to do inspections daily, but is that practical? Can you actually do that? Can your workers do that? Have you allotted the time? Do you have the time? All of these things go into it. And so when I'm building systems for my clients, I actually don't build the system. They build the system.
Yeah.
I walk them through a series of questions. Why are you doing this? What is your rationale behind safety? Understanding there's no wrong answer. Some people are doing it, well, because I need it to bid. Okay, well, that's a starting point.
Yep.
Is that really why you believe in safety? Probably not. But right now, that's your connection. So that's what we're going to go with right now. And we build from there. And a lot of my work is actually self-development and personal revelation. I take client owners through a value determination system. Why are you in business? Why do you even do the thing that you do? And now, if that all got taken away because of an incident, what does that mean to you? And usually that's the driving motivator. And when we can tie that, then the program just falls into place. It's real easy.
Yeah, I could see that. If you take a specific incident or a specific emotional driver or psychological driver, that's where they start to connect with it themselves. And I've run into the same thing in marketing and advertising as a virtual chief marketing officer, which is, well, why do you want to grow your business? And they go, well, we just, we need more money. And I go, well, more money doesn't necessarily mean more profit. So do you want more money or do you want more profit? And they're like, I guess I want more profit. Okay, well, where does your profit come from? Customers, like every customer, or the 80-20 rule? Probably 80% of your income comes from 20%. Oh yeah, I never thought of that. And again, it's like you got to connect. What you're doing is you're connecting the dots to the individual versus they just put the manual on the shelf and go, we did safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, and making them understand that you can have this shiny binder and it means nothing if you're not invested in it, because then your staff won't be invested in it. And there has to be a connection.
Totally. I could see the book title, Meaningless Shiny Binders.
I really do think half the time that's what should be written down the spine.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I haven't been much in the manufacturing world, but it's very real to me working in large corporations that there's these policies and manuals, but they literally just sit there and it's never put into work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
safety is one of those things that it's like, okay, this could actually mean life or death.
And I would rather have a binder that was 30 pages thick,
yeah,
that had meaning to it, as opposed to a 300-page tome that is dusty and has no purpose. And its only purpose is to sit there and satisfy a legislator who comes through going, do you have this? And you go, yes. Here it is.
Yeah, we're compliant.
Yeah. And, you know, and that's the problem is so much of safety conversations are around that word compliance.
Yes.
We are compliant with. Well, but why? Like, and honestly, part of it is our own safety professionals' faults, because we get so, well, this is the danger. Yep. These are the hazards. We need to control them. We need to engineer. We need to create systems, and they get so complex, and then they force that on other people. So you have a large complex facility, right? Whether that's in some kind of industrial complex, whether that's manufacturing or oil and gas or whatever it is, very large, very dangerous, with a lot of hazards. They need to have those systems in place. But then they bring you and me on as a consultant or a contractor, and we come in and we're going to do work, and they say, whoa, before you can work with us, you need to have a safety system that is equal to or better than ours. And suddenly me, as a small employer of 8 staff and myself, I now have to have this many procedures to deal with complex lockouts? No. Do I need to understand that you have that procedure? Yes, and we need to communicate that. But forcing some of these smaller entities into having these things, and then their safety systems grow unnecessarily, and they become that. It's a compliance thing. Well, I have it so I can work for this client.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a total disconnect from reality, other than I have it in place because I need the business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now I also see that you do a lot of public speaking. Tell me how public speaking has helped you. And also, I'm also not only interested in how public speaking gets the safety message out, but how do you go about getting the gigs? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I'd like to get into, like, how do you go out there and really pitch you and get yourself on stage? I also want to talk to that as well. So start with how public speaking is helping your message.
Well, so public speaking is important for anyone to get out there. Marketing is putting yourself out there. Public speaking is the fastest way to do it. With the safety, it's the only way to really communicate, right? Like when I'm doing a safety audit, I'm looking at how do you communicate out these policies. And everybody knows, everybody's doing email blasts or posts on the bulletin board. And everybody knows that email blasts get ignored and bulletin boards get walked by. So if you really truly want to communicate to somebody, you've got to get face to face with them. And doing it one-on-one is, just like in business, networking, that is exhaustive and time consuming. So usually we're going to need to communicate the message in a larger forum, in some kind of a meeting. The problem is everybody knows that if you call a safety meeting right now, this is going to be the look, right? Oh, do I have to?
Yeah.
And
yes, before compliance.
Yeah, because they're boring, right? Because we're doing it for compliance. So first of all, just like in public speaking, and why I teach this so much is because, first, what's your message and why are you saying it? Why is it important to your audience? I know why it's important to you, but why is this information now critical for your audience to be hearing? And so diving into that, and here's a fun statistic for you. When it comes to audience engagement, if you're having a monologue in that I am just talking to you, and so you, Edwin, just have to sit there and listen to Tyler talk, your engagement will be 78%. But if I engage you in a dialogue, a two-way communication, the engagement goes up to 92%. So that's a 14% gap just by eliciting information from you. And I think a lot of people forget that because it's a safety meeting. We've got to talk about the hazards. We've got to talk about the incidents last month. We got a new policy. We need to give it out to the people, and they forget that you're doing it for your audience. So involve your audience. Ask a question. Hey, we had this incident last month. What does it mean to you? Was anybody bothered by it? What are some of your thoughts on that? These are some of the control measures that we're implementing. Can I get some feedback on that? How actionable do you think this is? Does anybody have any other suggestions? And suddenly you're getting a mind hive mentality, and everybody will walk away from that presentation going, that was the best safety meeting I've ever been at. Yeah, he was so good. And you didn't do a thing. You just guided the conversation. And so I took that approach when I was a dedicated safety professional, and I would lead meetings in that way. I would engage and solicit feedback, and we'd write it down and we'd follow up on it. And when you're on large industrial complexes like that, particularly when I kick off audits, I do something which I don't know why it's unique amongst auditors, but a lot of safety auditors will not do this one thing. And I will ask for the company to hold a very large AGM. I'm like, look, I get that it's going to take some time, but when do you typically hold these? Like, when do you have large scale meetings? I will incorporate it in with you. I will come on your time, but it'll be more helpful for me if I just come and address the elephants in the room up front. And so we hold a big safety meeting, and we have these little dialogues and then go away. And so what happens is that usually the decision makers are going to be included in on those meetings. Good. So I would start delivering these, pre-audit talks and explain, the interview process and why it matters to them. And then the CEOs or the decision makers would hear that, and they'd come to me and they'd be like, Tyler, that was really good. I'm wondering, I've got this thing, or I'm on this board, or we're having our AGM coming up here, our large corporate event. Would you come and be a keynote? Nice. And I would, yes, absolutely. Of course I would. So, but I was able to do that just because I practiced this so much and I put the messaging out. And then that's the other key too. If you want to be a public speaker, you may have a talk, right? I have about 5 keynotes that I regularly present.
Right.
But I never present the same talk twice. Same title.
Yeah.
Usually the same content.
Yep.
But I always ask, what do you want? What is the deliverable? Who is the audience? What is your desired outcome of this? What do you want people to feel? What do you want people to take away? Is this for the executive? Is this for everyone? Is this just for blue collar, white collar, mix? Where are we at? What is the demographic? And I do a lot of audience analysis up front so that I can really tailor my talks so that when I do get the chance to get up and deliver, that I'm educated on the questions that I'm asking, because again, I'm going to get the audience as involved as I possibly can.
It's awesome. There's a couple takeaways from what you said. Number one, I like the fact that you do that analysis beforehand. So that you're understanding your demographics and psychographics always in a new unit of time. Mm-hmm. Because the talk may be the same, but the audience is not the same. And so now you got to tweak it so the audience has those aha moments.
Yes.
Earlier, you also mentioned about guiding the communication, therefore they got more value out of it. And that reminds me of a sales book. I forgot who it was, but he said the person who asks the questions is the one that controls the conversation.
Yes.
So what you're doing is you're guiding them by asking them. They get engaged, and now you're moving them along this river of understanding versus being talked at.
Yeah. And it's important to know the question that you're asking. So one of the biggest lessons that I ever learned was actually from my best friend, Jason Corbett. He's a doctorate of law, runs an incredible law practice in Thailand called Silk Legal. And he said to me, I was asking him, I'm like, what, like, because he is a international business lawyer and
Mhm.
very, very well paid. And I said, what makes you such a good lawyer? Like he very seldomly is any of his work in the courtroom, but when he does do courtroom work, man, is he on fire. And he said, well, I never ask a question that I don't know the answer to. More, because his whole job is to guide conversations so that his clients get the best
Right.
outcome.
Right.
And as soon as he said that to me, I was like, yes, when I'm guiding a conversation, I'm making sure I already know what the answer is, right? I've already studied your system. I've
Mhm.
talked to your people. Like, I know I'm not asking the question because I don't know. I'm asking the question because I do know, and I want to know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to elicit your understanding and your thoughts and your participation on that. I get it.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. And it's okay. Now let's get down to the business of public speaking. How do you tell me through you start your day, you've got your plan. How do you go out and get more gigs as a public speaker for you?
Well, so for me, I have a lot of different avenues and methods. So I have an agent at this point. I'm
Okay.
blessed to be a part of a very wonderful speaker bureau. So I have representation that is actively looking on my behalf.
Okay.
But even with that, that's only about 10% of the work that I get. The majority of what I get is from me. So the first thing is anybody who goes on LinkedIn to see, and you would have been in the same position, the
Yep.
very first thing that I say is that I am a keynote speaker, right?
There you go.
I'm an
Well,
author, auditor, keynote speaker. So when
okay.
people are doing a LinkedIn search and they're looking for keywords, keynote, it's right there. And the speaker or keynote speaker, I'm going to show up in searches. And then making sure that your messaging is tailored. So, and the funny thing is when people come to LinkedIn, as you would have, safety is on the forefront, right? They go, oh, total buy-in, safety consultant, that's it. Because LinkedIn is particularly my LinkedIn profile is very professional. It is the one bit of my social media that is dedicated to safety
Yeah.
and just safety. Where all the rest of my social media, my Facebook, my Instagram, Twitter, they're all geared around my public speaking aspects and my speaker training. So when you come to me from LinkedIn, now I know, right? LinkedIn, okay, we're talking safety, but that those keyword matches, those searches, and then making sure that the messaging is consistent. That I teach people, I don't build safety systems. I help you create your safety system. That I am a keynote presenter, that I will talk about safety. I help guide safety conversations so that you have a more effective safety program. And so it's having that messaging on LinkedIn and then telling people, hey, if you need a speaker, I want to speak. I want to be on your stage,
Right.
and then practicing it, finding the opportunities. So, I mean, I'm on everything from, Podmatch so that I can find podcasts because then people hear me and they go, oh, I really like that guy. Here's my contact information. Everybody knows how to do it. So if you need a keynote presenter, hey, that guy is good looking, articulate, and knows what he's talking about. We should have him in our company.
That's awesome. So really, okay, so number one, you have an agent, although it's only 10% of your work, but you have representation. You've really polished your LinkedIn profile, which I'm big on LinkedIn. I get a lot of clients from LinkedIn. I should say I get really good clients. Maybe not a lot quantitatively, but the ones I get are really good. So you're leveraging social media, particularly that platform, which I think is important for keynote speakers to really take LinkedIn seriously.
Yeah.
And then you're on Podmatch. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
I believe that's how we connected.
Yeah, it is.
It is how we connected. So you're active on Podmatch, looking to connect with other podcasters, video guys, other types of hosts, and leveraging that platform to get more exposure like you are doing here.
Yes. And that's really it, because when you can find, you have to let people know that you're there.
Yes.
And things like this are, especially being on podcasts, that's where you start to establish your authority. So when people are looking at, particularly when they're the decision makers in companies, and they want to bring somebody in for a keynote, and they're going to, particularly if they're going to pay you money and fly you and put you up someplace, they want to know what they're getting for that.
Absolutely.
So you got to get really good with that messaging. This is what you're going to get. And then social proof, right? What are the that's the other thing too. You've got to get testimonials. If you're going to be a speaker, you don't walk away from that without taking out your cell phone. And if you're really smart, you have a little gimbal like I do. So it's a nice steady cam, and you put it in front and you're like, Edwin, tell me, how did I do? And you're like, oh, this is the greatest talk ever. And I'm like, great, that's going on my website if it's okay with you. And they're like, yeah, no, sign off or whatever. The more testimonials you have, the more social proof you have. And have people be specific. And so don't just say, how was I, right? What was your key takeaway? What was one thing that I said that had real impact for you? And those give you the real honest responses to your messaging. And then they know, they're like, oh, well, this is, and you know too. So one of the reasons I like getting the feedback is not because I like stroking my ego, although it's really good. I like a little ego stroke is nice for me, but it also lets me know what landed. Like, what of my messaging was important, because I could talk for years on safety. I could talk for years on public speaking, but what are the messages that are actually landing? Because that's where I need to spend most of my time.
Yeah.
Because I could go anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think I like the fact that you highlighted that fact that you're not only doing the research before the talk, but really by asking people, getting the testimonials and ask them what landed, what moved the needle for you. You're now even highlighting the next talk better, because you're like, okay, I know these three things really resonated with the last crowd. So more than likely, if I give the same keynote, these three will probably be also highlighted because of industry trends, what's happening in the news today, whatever. You're always getting that valuable feedback.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I would, a bit of advice that I would give to people is I'm lucky. I've built myself up to the point now where I get a lot of referral business, which is important, right? Referrals are the bread and butter of any industry, any business. And if you want to be a speaker, you want to make sure that you're getting the referrals. Get referrals by giving. You just give, right? I don't hold anything back. Yes, I do private training, and yes, I do private coaching, and yes, I could do all those sales, but I'm going to give the content that I'm giving you for free is going to be the same stuff that you get when you pay. The only difference is the access that you get. So you give and then give some more, and you're going to get the referrals. You're going to get the really good testimonials. But before you can get there, you need to get speaking gigs, right? How do I get experience? I can't get a job. I don't have experience. I don't have experience because I can't get a job.
Right.
Really quickly, anybody who wants to do this, you're like, I have a message. I want to talk about it, but I don't know how. Google is your biggest friend. You can literally type in call for speaker or call for presenter, speaker proposal, presentation proposal, and then get niche. What is it that you talk about? So call for proposal, industrial safety, call for proposal, social marketing, call for proposal for whatever that thing that you're doing. And then if you want to get really, really hyper niche, type in the city or the state that you want to do it in. And now you're going to find, they will come up. Google will have it. They're usually on back pages of industry places. So chambers of commerce and industry associations. And that's the other thing too. You can, if you know that you're in a business that has various industry associations, reach out to those industry associations and say, look, I would love to come and present on this. Make sure that you have a really good pitch for them, and then boom, they go. And that's how you start to find those opportunities, because half the time people are looking for a speaker and nobody wants to do it. That's the thing, right? More people are afraid of public speaking than they are of death, which means that they'd rather be given the eulogy than be the guy in the casket. So it's clawing teeth, pulling teeth, nails on chalkboard just to get somebody to come up and do this. So if you are brave enough to say, hey, I have a message and I want to say a thing, you've got an audience.
That's really good. You know, I think Tyler, I think there's a ebook waiting to happen with you. Like all the stuff that you said in the last 10 minutes about how to get gigs, you know, and each chapter could be, okay, the first chapter is what's your mindset? Two, you know, how to use Google. Three, how, you know, working with an agent, podcasting, you know, all put out content, all that stuff that you just said. I think all those little actionable nuggets that you just shared with us literally could be a 20-page, 30-page ebook that people could download.
Better. It's a free 11-page download if they go to SeanTylerFoley.com.
Okay, good. Well, there you go. So it's already there.
It's already there. Yeah, a lot of that stuff is in. We've got a free download. I also got my book that'll be coming out in September, The Power to Speak Naked. And that has all of these tips and more in it. So anybody who wants to go to their local retailer and put it on pre-sale, my publisher will love you.
Yeah. Okay, great. So check out that book. When the book comes out in September, reach out to me and then we'll do another episode of Growth Driven on that specific topic, or I should say about your book and what's covered in the book.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to do it.
Great. Well, Tyler, man, you've given so much value today. I really, really appreciate it. I've learned some things. I know that people that have watched this or listened to this or will listen and watch in the future are going to gain a lot of knowledge. If you are looking to improve safety at your corporation or become a better public speaker, I go to totalbuyin.com, connect with Tyler Foley, specifically on LinkedIn, go to his profile, and you know, just I think there's a lot of value here that you could get by connecting with Tyler like I have. Tyler, thank you so much. Last parting words. What would you like to say to the audience that maybe we didn't cover today?
That you have a story. So whether you're trying to communicate a safety system or whether you're just trying to be a public speaker in general, connecting your audience with your story is going to be how you're going to have the most impact. And if you're thinking to yourself, I don't have a story, you're wrong. Everybody does. And the thing that you're afraid to say, very likely the thing that your audience needs to hear.
I like that. I like that. That the big challenge is the big opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Hey, once again, Tyler, thank you so much for joining us on Growth Driven. Looking forward to having you back when your book comes out in September. Until then, best of luck. And everybody that's here on Growth Driven, thanks for supporting my channel. Thanks for supporting my efforts. We're just here to bring value, and hopefully you're getting that from us. So until next time, we'll see you.